Yo, what's going on guys? I'm Maze, and welcome to my Pokemon Sun and Moon review series. Today I'll be reviewing episode 121, Mallow's Vigilant Effort, the Forest Pokemon Café, which I can safely say was a decent episode with some charming features sprinkled in between, along with a surprisingly important ending which makes a satisfying payoff. So if you want to know more about this, then get relaxed everybody, as I will now jump right into this review. Let's go! So this episode begins off at Mallow's cafeteria, where she is catering food to the Alola Island kahuna, Olivia. Which normally in any old series or early Sun and Moon, I would be surprised to see Olivia return. However, I am not surprised here, and that is because I am very used to this slice of life theme now. This theme bringing all sorts of characters we thought would only see in one episode or a few for many more episodes. It's pretty admirable. Why am I mentioning this theme though? Well, you'll see later on into this video. Getting back to the story though, after Mallow is pleased to hear Olivia's compliments regarding her cooking, and after she stated to her what her goal is, which is to make the best cafeteria in Alola, her father asks her to pick up some big mushrooms for the restaurant at Orangaru's own cafe for Pokemon only, which she accepts this chore and sets off to the cafe. Side note though, I don't know if anybody else caught this, but I found it pretty amusing seeing Shaman slide across Mallow's restaurant's counter to clean it up. Cut into Orangaru's cafe now. Team Rocket is enjoying some drinks, while also complaining about all the orders they receive from HQ and how hard they are, while HQ does all the easy stuff, which is very typical of our trio here. May I mention again that I love how these characters act like they get drunk almost from the drinks they get served as well, despite it not being alcohol. It's pretty humorous. Anyhow, Beware stops by to give Orangaru some honey while then taking Jessie and James home. Not Meowth though, because he was behaving himself in the cafeteria by not shouting unlike his comrades, which he already knew not to shout in this premise. I said "aww" out loud when I saw Beware pat Meowth as well. It truly is a good mother to Team Rocket, and it's stufful. After this, Mallow arrives at the cafe and Orangaru gives Mallow the mushrooms, while also trusting Meowth that he ain't planning any schemes today, upon seeing him. Suddenly though, the pack of Pissimians from episode 64 arrive at the cafe, which unlike Olivia, I will admit I was surprised by these Pokemon returning, and that obviously is because the episode featuring them was banned in the USA for what the Pokemon company believed was accidental racism, which made many people think, including myself, that we wouldn't see these Pissimians ever again. But here we are. It's nice to see they ain't neglecting them. Though, to make sure it doesn't look like the English dub isn't ignoring continuity, Mallow doesn't specifically state that these are the Pissimians from the banned episode, despite being so, which is bound to happen in the actual English dub episode as well. Which altogether is very understandable and also very clever. Again though, I'm just glad we got to see them return in some fashion, as this series is all about slice of life, which means the return of all sorts of characters as they matter in the writer's eyes. Talking about characters mattering, continuing on with the story, Orangaru tests Mallow with taking the orders of these Pissimians and many more Pokemon throughout the day, while Meowth does some translating for her as he just so happens to be sitting around being bored. These Pokemon including the already seen Officer Jenny's Gumshoes, Dramper, and Tapu Koko, along with a bundle of wild Pokemon. Mallow had no idea why Orangaru tested her with this at first, but she did it at first just to be respectful. And each scene was surprisingly really charming. There was just some odd pleasure of me watching Mallow try and come up with drinks and food for these Pokemon, which I thought I'd never experience with her kind of passion outside of episode 72, which was the only time before this episode I found fun with that. But here I am once again. Of course though, the best highlight in all of this was Mallow serving Tapu Koko, who she had created a vegetarian-like burger for, which I can agree with Meowth that it does actually look appetizing and I would want to try it for myself. It honestly made me kinda hungry despite just eating breakfast before this scene. And despite looking appetizing, Again, it was just fun to see Mallow put this together, and it had good payoff in the end, as after Tapu Koko demolishes this burger, it gives Mallow the Grassium Z, while Oranguru then gives Mallow a Z-ring for helping out the cafe throughout the entire day. Like, wow, that's all a pretty sweet conclusion. Now sure, some of you may be saying that Mallow doesn't deserve a Z-ring and crystal because she doesn't battle at all, but much like I stated in my episode 119 review, Z-rings and crystals are used for all sorts of things in the anime as opposed to just battles like the Pokemon games, such as helping Lana's goal of wanting to explore the sea in a bubble, protecting some lands, and using it for leisure. So because of this, I don't mind Mallow having this at all. It can help her outside of just wanting to become a stronger battler. I'm sure of it. Not to forget either that the goddamn Island Guardian recognized her good work throughout the entire day and even enjoyed her own work. So yeah, she must be worthy. It's all a lovely change of pace and twist compared to the games, in my own personal eyes. Though, I will admit, I was at least both shocked and a little disappointed at first to learn Mallow received the Grassium Z out of every other Z crystal. As surely if Ash never received the Fire Z crystal for his Torracat, the classmates weren't allowed to share duplicate Z crystals, despite the Fire Z crystal fitted Torracat so well for obvious reasons. Yet here we are almost 2 years later with this being proven wrong. And to be honest, I'd have just loved it if we saw Mallow with a different type of move anyway, much like what happened with Sophocles, especially if it was to be a type of Z move we have not witnessed yet in this series. But after thinking about this for 5 minutes after the episode ended, this must mean that Ash will just receive the Incineroar Z Crystal for Torracat instead, which is a superior reward, and the Grassium Z does fit Mallow's Pokemon best anyway, and she's a grass trainer in the Pokemon games, so I can't really complain much. They're both understandable, making me now accept this fate as well. It's actually respectable. I just let expectations take over me a little bit. If anything, a story is doing something right if you don't expect the final outcome. But with all of that now said, yeah, that's what happened to Mallow within this final part of the episode. She even stated that she no longer wants to make the best cafeteria in Alola for humans, but rather both humans and Pokemon, thanks to enjoying today's events, which is also a remarkable payoff in my eyes. Ending the episode off though, once Mallow returns to a restaurant at night, who her friends and Olivia had been working for a role while she was busy due to the restaurant itself being busy, Mallow showcases her new Z Crystal and Z-Ring to everybody while also telling them of the work she had done today. In which, Olivia then replies that this must have been a trial from Oranguru, which to be honest, was as surprising to hear as it was back in episode 107 by Tapu Fini, making a even more satisfying story. Though when it comes to ranking the episodes, I definitely prefer episode 107 more due to the trial itself being more unique in my own personal eyes. I've talked about it in 2 videos already, so I won't say any more about it. But anyhow, after this, our classmates then come together to show off their Z crystals and Z rings, which although you might take this shot for granted, I didn't. And that is because, much like KG said on Twitter, the shot shows that these characters are viewing each other as equals rather than feel one character being stronger over the other. Even if we, the audience, know Ash is the one who is the strongest out of all of them. But still, this was a beautiful shot. Every character in this series is now equal in development. That concludes the story and the majority of this review. As you can see, if I was to put this episode simply, I found it charming. It was heartwarming. It was great in terms of development for Mallow. Mallow has shown that she can really hold on her own and not let other characters like Ash for example hold her back like usual. If I had any issue with this episode though, that would simply be the fact that, again, this could have happened way earlier in the series, but it didn't. And that is because Sun and Moon was too focused on the game stories and unique slice of life stories, instead of focusing on each character at the same time in an equal way. Keyword, equal way. As obviously Lily and Ash got the most development back then. This is starting to feel like a rushed ending to the series. But then again, like I said in my recent ranking Pokemon series video, I couldn't imagine wanting to give up any of those stories for early character development, as I love those stories so much. But, we can all live with this, and it doesn't take the overall enjoyment away from this episode and the entire series anyway. Would I recommend this episode? Sure. However, I know for a fact that a majority of other people will have found this episode to be just meh or boring. So it's up to you to decide at the end of the day whether you want to watch this or not. I can't really blame the others though. It's very understandable if they found this episode boring, as it was mostly just cooking. In fact, that is also why I'm deciding to put this episode as number 23 on my season 3 leaderboard, as I enjoyed the race from episode 119 and the action from episode 120 more, which both share a similar theme to this episode as well. Though, don't get me wrong, again, I like this episode. It was surprisingly charming. It's going to be standing as number 91 out of 121 episodes of the overall leaderboard as well, which is in the adequate area. Link to the full leaderboards will be in the description below. As always though, do let me know in the comments down below what you personally thought of this episode though, if you've watched it. I love to hear, as we can have different opinions. But with that said, that now concludes today's video. So if you enjoyed, then please be sure to consider leaving a like, a share, and if you're new here, subscribe along with hitting that bell icon to stay in the loop with all things Pokemon anime related. If you want to support this channel any further way, I also have a Patreon. Thank you for watching everybody. This is Entity Maze, signing out.